Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. All right, I have been reading the comments, and I always do, but it's finally time to hit a channel that I've actually had a lot of requests to check out. And that channel is called Kraut. So just pulling it up, it looks like Kraut just hit 500,000 subscribers, so congratulations to that channel. Now I was looking through the videos, and there are a bunch of videos with like well over 1 million views, so obviously this has been a very popular channel. And to get my first taste of the channel, I'm going to be checking out this one, and it is titled How Vodka Ruined Russia. All right, so I guess they're going to, take apart the vodka stereotype, I guess, of Russia. But yeah, I'd be interested to see if there's actually a case for like a negative impact on vodka that is going to be like quantifiable. Anyways, I have no idea what to expect from this channel, so the original video is down below. Make sure you are checking that out and giving support to the content creator and of course the video itself. All right, let's get started. All right, let's see what we got. This wait, what? That's not vodka. It just looks like beer.
When you search through history books, you will find many anecdotes on the role that alcohol and other addictive substances played in shaping societies throughout human history. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt paid their farm laborers in bread and beer. Greek
Yeah, now people know that they thought it was like purely by like slave labor. That's kind of been a stereotype going down. Yeah, but there's tons of evidence they were paid in beer, but not just to consume. It was like a commodity back then.
Wine was one of the most prized commodities of the ancient world. So when the Carthaginians sold their low-quality wine abroad, they falsely labeled the amphoras as Greek wine. The British notoriously forced access
Greek wine,
and
super
control
valuable
over the 19th century Chinese economy by illegally selling opium to its people, but no historic relationship.
Big reason for that was Chinese culture and Chinese society has long not wanted to necessarily import a lot of goods. They very much want to focus on exporting. It's been like that since ancient times. And the British Empire was like, no, we want you to open up your trade and have completely free trade. And the Chinese are like, no, and try to find ways to skirt around that. One way was by smuggling drugs. Something like a fifth, I think, or something, fifth to seventh, or I forget. I forget exactly. From anywhere from like a fifth to a tenth or something like that. I've heard. I'm just top of my head. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But that like a fifth, either like a fifth to like a tenth of the entire GDP for the British at that time in the 1800s was coming from opium. It was coming from drugs.
Between a society and an addictive substance is as fascinating, sinister, and barely talked about as the relationship between Russia and vodka.
Great voice, by the way, here.
There is nothing special about vodka. It has no taste, no flavor, no smell. It's just ethyl alcohol, simply produced from wheat or rye. And these simple, not too special facts of vodka is exactly what made it so special. Its simplicity allowed it to be produced and
potato not a native to Europe. It is native to the Americas, so it didn't even come to existence until well after the Columbian Exchange.
Consumed en masse by simple peasants throughout Eastern Europe beginning in the 8th century. Any peasant could make it and any peasant could sell it until the 1480s. Until then, the lands we know as Russia were a set of small independent principalities and kingdoms, until Ivan III became the ruler of the Duchy of Moscow and by conquest united the principalities under one Russian kingdom, of which he became the Tsar.
Never invade Russia unless you're the Mongols. Cue the Mongotage.
Ivan established a centralized government with a centralized autocratic
We're the creation of the modern Russia right here.
And as he built his state, he noticed the
Ivan,
popularity
the founder
of that cheap, intoxicating spirit amongst his peasants and had an idea. He banned the production and sale of alcohol by peasants and declared the production and sale of alcohol a royal privilege. All alcohol was now the property of the Russian crown.
That's not going to go well.
Only be produced by and bought from the Russian crown.
You can't regulate it like that. You can't regulate something like that is that easy to produce. Potatoes, especially if you're using potatoes as your source, there are something. One of the reasons potatoes have been so, I guess, such a big deal in history is because they're easy to farm, and you can do it in a lot of places, and it's cheap.
of revenue for the Russian royal family, a monopoly on a cheap product that everyone wanted and which could be very cheaply produced en masse. Throughout the centuries, the Tsars opened vodka plant after vodka plant, pumping out cheap alcohol while filling their own pockets. A system that was so profitable that when Catherine the Great rewarded lesser nobles for their service, she didn't give them land, but vodka production and selling grants to cash in on this lucrative monopoly.
Catherine was a huge butt kisser of the nobles. She definitely supported the nobles with peasant revolutions and stuff like that, so a lot of peasants are going to hate her.
A system that lasted for almost 428 years. And as much as this may sound like just a mere little interesting historic anecdote on a long-gone mercantile economic system, there is far more to it than that. Something sinister, the reverberations of which still echo throughout Russian society to this day.
He's going to talk about the
Alcohol is a poison, harmful to the soul and body. Therefore, it is a great sin to drink alcohol and to offer it to others. And it is even a greater sin to produce and sell this poison.
Church
this phrase
influence
is
here.
from Tolstoy. When Tsar Nicholas II had to rescind powers to an elected body in 1905, one of the first things the Russian liberals and social democrats who were newly elected into a position of power wished to do was to combat the massive alcoholism problems of Russia. The first...
Well, this is going to be an interesting thing. It's like a precursor to like American prohibition. Can you actually successfully legislate something based on moral principles like they're saying is the effect of alcohol? We found it in the United States. They tried it for nearly 10 years. Didn't work very well. People still found a way to do it. Even though it was illegal, then it just became a black market thing, and it ended up causing, probably more problems than it did solutions.
Step was to ask the famous and revered...
Now, something to keep in mind here, by the way, is the use of alcohol at this time period, both the United States and Russia, also increased greatly due to the work conditions in and around the Industrial Revolution. For the United States, that was a huge thing. It was once we saw that the Industrial Revolution had been hitting, the terrible lifestyle that it gave for a lot of people led to a lot of drinking, and which led to a lot of substance abuse and the domestic abuse, which was one of the big kind of things about the people that supported prohibition was that's what it was causing. But that's the historical context here.
Novelist to write a warning label to be printed on every single bottle of vodka. The Tsar, who owned the entire alcohol industry, refused. Because the system the Tsars established over the course of 400 years was not only a source of revenue. By controlling the entire market, they also determined the price and consequently kept the population drunk on a constant mass supply of cheap and widely available vodka.
So they did not.
A peasant who wastes his money on vodka is too drunk to think of his situation and how he got into it, too drunk to organize any protest against his circumstances, so drunk he beats his kids into being drunks like him, and so drunk he beats his wife into submission.
That was the big thing that American prohibitionists were saying. So interesting that you're seeing where you have like the government in the United States pushing to, legislate that. It's like the opposite. The government, it looks like in Russia, the monarchy wants to use it actually as a tool.
In the end, that peasant is a peasant in service of ensuring the security of the regime that keeps him drunk. The Tsars of Russia established a profitable system of state-subsidized alcoholism, which not only ensured them personal wealth, but the security of their regime. They were in essence drug dealers, or at least relied on the same addiction-fed market that a drug dealer would rely on. Alcohol addiction is a horrible disease.
Why do they keep bringing up Mexico? Is that really the stereotype he's trying to go for? I mean, yeah, there are drug cartels and stuff. Is that what we're...
Inflamed and swollen blood vessels, kidney, pancreas and liver failure that leads to an excess of fat cells creating deformed abdomens. But far from just the individual effects, alcohol is also part of a vicious social circle of misery. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to become an addict. Addiction is preconditioned on misery and despair. It appears where there is despair and hopelessness, and perversely,
peer pressure as well
increases that hopelessness. The alcoholic not only becomes more hopeless and miserable themselves, but will contribute to the misery and hopelessness of those around him. Perplexingly, addiction on a massive social scale creates social strife and misery, while simultaneously robbing those affected by it of the means to do something about it. This is why the drug trade comes with violence, social decline and disaffection of communities, because it uses misery as an economic commodity. It is because of this, and largely forgotten today, that the Russian Communist Party was a prohibitionist party that advocated for the banning of liquor. In early Soviet propaganda, you will find this reflected, as well as in old Soviet movies, in which the revolutionaries smash liquor bottles as if they were chains that had constrained them. Lenin is
Interesting. If you're talking about the early years of like the Bolshevik Party, communists, if you were somebody that was trying to take a moral position based off of liquor, you actually sided with the communists.
was strictly prohibitionist and declared alcohol to be a vice by which the bourgeoisie subjugated and controlled the proletariat. Consequently, after the Bolshevik takeover, the Tsar's vodka plants were all shut down and closed. For a while, when Stalin seized power, he reopened the vodka plants, started filling bottles.
I was about to say, vodka doesn't go anywhere, but interesting the grounds how it changed. Stalin changed so many things that the early Communist Party was trying to achieve, right? Stalin, he totally hijacked a lot of it and put it in a different direction that the founders, I don't know if you want to call it that, were envisioning for their future.
Deeply amongst the public. Stalin pretty much rebuilt the old Tsarist system of subsidized alcoholism that the revolutionaries had tried to dismantle. He just renamed it to the People's Vodka. In a very cynical move, the Russian people already had a people's vodka for 400 years. Yeah. This series of events is commented on by George Orwell in his famous book Animal Farm, an often overlooked scene where the animals in their revolution destroy all the alcohol they found in the house of the farmer Jones,
I didn't know
except
that was
for
an
Napoleon,
animated
who steals himself away with some liquor.
Film for Animal Farm.
The Tsarist system, which was re-established by Stalin, remained in place throughout the remaining 60 years of Soviet history. Its effects were most strongly felt starting in the 1970s and throughout the 1980s during the Soviet Union's increasing economic decline. In those days, there was not much to work for. There was not much to celebrate. There was a lost war still being fought in Afghanistan, and there was not much for the state to sell. But there was always money to be made when socialism fails by selling bottles of cheap vodka to a miserable public. The recent HBO series Chernobyl did an excellent job at
I love that show. I know there's a lot of inaccuracies and stuff that you can look at, but I love the Chernobyl show. After Game of Thrones ended, I was like right when Chernobyl I think was starting. It's the only reason I kept my like HBO subscription was about Chernobyl, and I don't know, the production and stuff is just...
Its audience, by the late 1980s, Russian society had a deep-seated and systematic alcoholism problem. The Stolshinaya vodka bottles you see in the series are also somewhat famous, because you couldn't close them anymore once you took the cap off. They were made that way because in production the assumption was that the average Russian, once opening a vodka bottle, would finish it in one sitting, therefore closing the bottle wasn't necessary. By the late 1980s, the alcoholism problem reached such an extent that Gorbachev, in desperation, enacted a prohibition of liquor. This resulted in the mass appearance of illegal vodka plants throughout the country and was therefore abandoned.
That's exactly what happened in the United States in the 20s. People just started making it themselves. Alcohol is not hard to make at all.
Today, almost 30 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the problems remain. The system of state-subsidized alcoholism no longer exists. The vodka plants, though, were privatized and are owned by oligarchs who still sell the vodka at cheap prices. No measures were taken by the Russian government to stem the benign systematic alcoholism and excessive alcohol consumption of the Russian public. The ramifications of such are of course felt in crime rates, productivity, and social decline and misery. Russia will eventually not get around having to confront a legacy of 400 years of alcoholism. And this is more than just a history lesson, let alone restricted to Russia. Think of the current opiate crisis in the United States, how the current response to social misery is to dish out pills to help people stomach through their days and lives. How a fully legal dependency on addictive substances was created in the United States at a profit that uses social and individual misery as a market commodity. And more to the point...
So he's trying to liken it to modern day opioid epidemics. Again, is really in a lot of ways a separate issue too, because you have something that's regulated and it's medical, but of course can be abused. And you're not going to be, making many of, unlike vodka, you're not going to be making a lot of these advanced opioids on your own.
How it is largely ignored and not a topic of contention. Drug-riddled and miserable communities often find themselves within such a state because it is the misery and hopelessness that creates the perfect market conditions for addictive substances, which consequently increase the misery and violence while robbing communities of the ability to rid themselves thereof. The entirety of our understanding of addiction and how it plays into society through the ills it creates is largely flawed and dominated far too much by a judgmental standard that reduces the problem to individuals to be punished rather than social ills in need of solutions.
No context.
If you're interested in this topic and want to know more, I recommend to you to read Drink, A Cultural History of Alcohol by Ian Gately.
All right, good to know. All right, let me give you my final thoughts. I also want to know what you think. All right, so basically it looks like what we saw there was kind of history of alcohol really in Russia. And I definitely learned some stuff. I did not know very much about how the monarchy, the Russian monarchy had monopolized it, or at least attempted to, even though like they're saying like people could hit it that way. Now there wasn't as much discussion in it necessarily about effects, and it seems like that's how the video was going to go with. It was more just like a history of it and then saying it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. I was hoping to have seen some maybe more, I don't know, data or more implications of it in a way. But nevertheless, it was informative to see that. To see that history, because again, I learned a lot, and I actually didn't know the depth to it either too, about how like philosophically speaking, how Lenin and Stalin differed on the issue, other than the fact that I know that vodka continued to become an issue, but that it became like a platform of Vladimir Lenin and early communism. That's something I learned, and I'm really glad I learned that, because that can be something else I can kind of add to talk about why people supported the communist movement in a lot of ways. So you have these economic ways. And like he was saying, though, Lenin was also trying to use it as a way to say that the bourgeoisie, they were exploiting the proletariat with that, like literally with, it's like, the whole opioid of the masses thing. Like that's how, they said religion was opiate of the masses. It's like vodka was literally the opiate of the masses, and trying to add that to the platform. I thought it was very interesting to learn about. Anyway, but yeah, I learned a lot from it, and I think I, did some comments along the way. Hopefully you found was useful, and I'd like to know what you think. What do you think about this issue? Even more generally, if you want to talk about the role government plays in potentially addictive and harmful substances, what is the role, or should not be the role of governments that? And we have kind of an interesting last century or so of experiments, like you saw with Russia, you see with the United States. I don't know, kind of interesting. And I remember it's a discussion when I taught U.S. history more, when I used to teach more U.S. history classes. It was always an interesting dialogue to talk about that, about legislating something, especially if it's being talked about in a moral way, which was one of the big things that people were talking about that were opposed to alcohol and which led to prohibition. Always brings a really good, thoughtful dialogue. So anyway, hopefully you're having those conversations on your own. All right. If there are more Kraut videos you think that I should check out, you can let me know down below. Again, I watched this channel because I had seen for a while now a lot of suggestions. So feel free to down below suggest anything if you think there's something I should check out, and I'll see what y'all say. All right, again, the original video link is down below. Make sure you support Kraut in the original video, and we'll see you next time.